Before we leap into the next version of ourselves, we typically need to grieve the one we've been. And this is huge because what was happening with this client is that this other version of herself was trying to make themselves known. And this client kept wanting to just rush the process and get to the other side of that so that she can feel better. We always just want to feel better. And it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? No one likes to sit in discomfort because there's a lot of uncertainty in discomfort. We don't know what's going to happen. But before we leap, we have to grieve. Because whether that version of you was the overachiever, the peacekeeper, the perfectionist, I was definitely the peacekeeper, the one who always held it together, or even the one that learned to hide, to shrink, to protect themselves from the pain, that version of you was actually quite sacred because it protected you in ways that your, I always call this the capital S self. That's the leader of self who leads all these parts that kind of come up in certain stressful situations. But that version of you is the one that carried you through, kept you safe, and they gave you what you needed at that time. So for us to not acknowledge their presence is almost a betrayal. And sometimes a lot of that is pretty subconscious, and we don't even realize we're doing it. And it could create this feeling of angst. It can create this feeling of disharmony. And I can't call it. I'm in a funk. And I was like, you're just grieving right now, just grieving. And maybe this part of you was even celebrated, right? You love this part because it got things done, right? Maybe they were praised. Maybe they were admired by other people. Maybe this part of you was promoted. It was dependent on, but now your soul is asking for something else. Not more achievement, okay? Not more doing. Because if you're in that realm, if that happens to you, then that means that you already know how to do that really well. But this moment when you're kind of in that in between space, that moment is asking for truth, presence, and freedom. And so that with that shift, it brings a lot of grief because on a psychological level, you're moving through what we call an identity death, what some might call an ego dissolution. And so on a soul level, it's almost like a rite of passage to return to your essence. And it's hard to see it that way because when you're in it, it does not feel sacred. So I totally get that. When you're knee deep in it, it doesn't feel special. But I call it an initiation. Even when it feels really, really dark and really, really painful, this is the path that is important for you to travel on so that you can actually get to who you are underneath all of the some of the distortions, right? And so the structures maybe that once made you safe, all the achievement, the perfection, the invisibility, they're dissolving. And their job is not to leave you empty, but to invite you into alignment. It's happening because some part of you is out of alignment. Hey, what's going on, Kenya? I'm looking over at the chat. It's been a minute. I hope you're well. Let's see. Atlanta. Oh, from the Thrive class. Oh, OGs. OGs in the house. It's good to see y'all. But yeah, so those challenges are inviting you into alignment. If you're experiencing a collapse of some sort and this identity that you used to have doesn't pair up, it means there's something that out of alignment. And so this is inviting you into wholeness, right? Because we're not just letting go of the hard parts, but we're also letting go of the parts that actually worked, the ones that we were actually proud about, the parts that were rewarded, and the parts that we thought we had to keep in order to be loved. And so I want you to bring that version of you into the light not to fix them, not to shame them, but to honor them. Because when I went through that process of taking that 3 year hiatus, and I went and traveled all over Southeast Asia from 2016 to 2019. And then I came back a bit more grounded, a bit more clear. And I needed that space. There was a lot of grieving that was happening. And there was a lot that was happening anyway in 2016 because my father had passed away around that time. And so there was a lot of grief. And I had to realize like, I'm no longer that person. And there was a lot of guilt that came with that grief because I knew what I was walking away from. I knew what I left behind. And for somebody who used their identity to caretake in a way, like if you grew up in an immigrant family, you kind of know what I'm talking about. I was always the one that had to mediate everything, hence I got into social work and became a therapist. And so leaving that space, there was a lot of guilt I carried. And sometimes walking away from a certain identity, there are other people who benefited from that identity. And since you're walking away from it, it almost feels like you're abandoning them. But in essence, you're abandoning yourself by not honoring those parts of you that were over functioning to keep you safe, connected. We often have a hard time letting go of the versions of ourselves because maybe they brought us a sense of belonging in a way. And walking away from them meant that I'm no longer going to have that kind of connection or those connections with people. And that's scary. That is scary. But it's also necessary. If you're not shedding, you're not growing. And I've definitely met people like that. I've got people like that in my family. And you just have to witness them in their process without trying to change or fix anything, which can be very hard for folks who are used to being in that kind of role. But I say, just honor the part of you that is no longer present, that um, is trying to, fall away, dissolve in some shape or form. And I would say, like, sit with them like an old friend, pull them up on the stoop almost, right? And say, I see how hard you tried. I know what you carried all these years, and thank you for getting me here. And it's this mutual understanding that whatever got you here is not going to take you to the next level, whatever level that is on your journey, right? And so it's almost like passing the baton in a way. But sometimes we can get stuck in that in between space because we're having a hard time letting go of um, sorry about that, but it could have a hard time of letting go of that version if you really like that version of you, right? Because that version of you maybe again got things done, accomplished so many things, and now you might be feeling a bit stagnant. And to me, that's not stagnation. It's almost like a sacred pause to realign, right? Because things are shifting. And so I believe when we stop rushing to this new version of ourselves as well, because some people want to rush onto the other side, we can finally respect whatever's ending, right? And so this is the space where your nervous system, like I said, is going to feel a bit unsettled, where you're not sure who you are anymore, where the clarity that you used to have doesn't quite fit, and it may feel like a crisis is happening, but it's actually, like I mentioned earlier, it's like a crossing, a rite of passage. So you let the old self be honored, and you let the grief be felt. And what I mean by that, on a practical level, when that sadness comes up, sometimes we think like something is wrong, but it's like, no, I'm just grieving right now. I'm grieving. Allow that sadness to come without shifting or changing it or trying to make it something else. Because what I find is that when you try to move too fast or move away from it, it comes back. It comes back. Anything that hasn't been fully processed or healed in a certain way will come back, y'all. That's right, Kenya. Kenya said other people like that old version. They do. They benefited from it, but at what cost to you, right? At what cost to you? You have to think about that a little bit. And then when that process comes, you can let the new version of you come forward, not because you're trying to become someone else, but because you're reconnecting with the part of you that's always been there, just buried under maybe fear, pressure, or even survival. And so that part doesn't need to earn your acceptance, it's already you, right? But they won't emerge through force, they arrive with reverence, through curiosity, through this quiet willingness to meet yourself just as you are with all the stuff, right? And I know some things have landed for some folks. If anything I've said so far is landing with you, just drop a word in the chat, especially in the replay. I come back and read the comments and just let me know what you're feeling right now. Just type in a yes. I'm feeling that. You don't need to figure everything all out tonight. Sometimes you just got just it's enough to just be in the presence of the truth, your truth, and whatever's connecting in the moment. So here's the invitation. Drink a little bit of tea here. Here's the invitation to y'all. What version of you are you being called to release in this moment? There's a lot of upheaval going on, and some identities are being rocked right now. And so there's a part of you that might need to be released. And so once you recognize what that part is, can you sit with that part? That part of you, not to fix it, change it, or rush it into something new, but just simply to honor it. And just share in the comments um, what that is for you. So I'm coming to an end here. But if you're in this season of unraveling and return, where grief and growth are happening literally at the same time, know that you're not by yourself in this. And this is the exact work I walk with others through, and it's the work I've lived myself. So if you're feeling like it's all falling apart, if you're in that in between space where the old version of you no longer fits, but the new one hasn't fully arrived yet, this is the shedding, this is the remembering, and this is the return. So you don't need to rebuild yourself from scratch. You just need to stop running from the parts of you that long to be grieved and the parts of you that are waiting to be born, right? It's like a death or rebirth process. And um, and I mentioned earlier in the beginning that often we might have to do it a few times. I definitely had to do it a few times. I'm sure it's going to happen again, but there's always a shift because as you evolve, things no longer resonate, things adjust, and then more of you comes out. Yes, Miss LGC says things are shifting. So many things are shifting. I mean, I can't even keep track with all the things that are going on right now. It's just wild out here. And so it's so important. I did a whole video about staying grounded and what that means to ground yourself in a very, what we would say, unstable world, because not everyone thinks it's unstable. So everybody has a different perspective on it. Kenneth says, releasing the need to people please, connecting with my authentic core, feeling untethered in this phase. A bit scary, yet freer. That's powerful uh, recognition because now you're almost getting to a neutrality, a space of neutrality. And when you're in that space, it's not that there's a lack of care or compassion. It's just a mutual understanding. And I know for me, being in that space, it's like, oh, I understand what all of this is about, meaning things have to collapse in order for something new to be rebuilt. And it looks like chaos, but it's actually a restructuring of a sort, a reordering of things. And it's a collective invitation. So as much as it looks like it's happening out there, it's all of it is also happening in here as well. And I talked about that in a few videos back about the dark night of the soul and how that's happening collectively in the world. And it does feel a little bit scary, but when you are connected to your own truth, it feels less scary. Because at the end of the day, I feel like we all sort of need this collective unraveling anyway, um, so that we can get more to the truth, right? This hence why things so much is being exposed right now. It's because the truth is coming out in any and by any means necessary. And so you might see that in your own personal life where that stuff is coming out heavy. Yeah. All right. So if any of this is spoken to you, you know, you can grab any free resources at the bottom of the description, such as the 30 days to lighten up, to release any emotional and physical clutter. And of course, 125 life changing self reflection questions, all linked below. And you can get on the wait list for the resistance reset for cohort 2, where we go much deeper into this exact journey. And subscribe, you know, if you want to keep walking this path together. So there's more to come. And I did notice that there's quite a bit, a few people that keep returning and not subscribing. So make sure you subscribe, and of course share this video if it resonated with you and someone needs to hear this message. And thank you for spending some time with me. I'm planning to do more lives like this before I didn't get to mention it earlier, but my are not always scheduled. It's just gonna be some of them are just gonna be impromptu. Because if I try to schedule it, it's just I know how I work, and it's just the pressure doesn't work for me. I'm a type B kind of personality, and I need a bit of fluidity. So you'll probably get some more of these impromptu lives. But if you have subscribed to the notifications, then you'll get notified when I actually put it up. All right. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the other side of change as always. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing, and I'll see y'all soon. Take care.